Welcome to the official YouTube channel for me, the Colin Cowherd Podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of our football content this postseason. Going to have instant reactions after every big game. Thanks. Well, I get Danny Parkins about once every 5 or 6 weeks. Like to have him more co-host of Breakfast Ball on FS1. And, he's a former Chicago radio guy, so he is really tied into that. So today I had, I'll give you the idea I threw out. I said, listen, parents love their kids the same, but they will make one of their children the executor of their will. That's the one they probably trust more. And so even parents have to make decisions on trust. And I trust Pat Riley when he says Eric Spoelstra. That's a really young guy, younger than the league average by 5 or 6 years, but he's smart. I trust Stan Kroenke when he says, I'm going to hire a 30-year-old head coach. The Chicago Bears with Marcus Freeman, I think Freeman could be the Sean McVay. I don't trust the Bears to make that call. Mike McCarthy is safe, will right the ship, will make you viable. A lot of owners, Cleveland Browns, thought Freddie Kitchens was the next thing. I don't trust the Bears on a young whiz kid hire. So McCarthy to me feels safe. I don't trust them with the will. Just basically, so there's my take on the Bears. Am I nuts?
No, you're not nuts. McCarthy is safe. This is a tricky one for me because I've spent the better part of a decade calling Mike McCarthy an overrated fraud. So if the Bears turn over the keys to the Caleb Kingdom to a guy who it really bothers me. He only won one Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, and he got gifted Aaron Rodgers' prime. And I know winning Super Bowls is hard, but I remember these games. I remember an NFC Championship game at Lambeau against Seattle when he was giving the ball to Eddie Lacy instead of letting Aaron Rodgers throw and then settling for field goals inside the 5-yard line. I remember Greg Jennings talking about how when they got a lead, them knowing that their coach stopped being aggressive and was just playing the clock instead of playing the game in front of him. I watched him be a touchdown favorite at home against Green Bay last year and get blown out. The flip side of this is, at least he's in the playoffs. At least he's good enough to be a favorite and then lose the game. But I think that you should dare to be great. Could you do worse than Mike McCarthy? Obviously. Of course. But it feels like the John Fox hire to me, which the Bears did.
Yeah.
That restore credibility. He's got a ring. He'll bring in a culture. There aren't many coaches who have even gotten 3 opportunities in the NFL, much less been successful on their 3rd opportunity in the NFL. So I find the hire, if that is what happens, to be very, very uninspiring. I would much rather roll the dice with Ben Johnson for the upside, even while I completely agree with you, the Bears deserve no benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking about this to a friend the other day, and I said, Chicago's got bad teams. And I said, my take is LA's got good teams. And the reason is we have good owners. Stan Kroenke's second, first, third richest owner in the league. People think there's a salary cap, so everybody's playing by the same rules. They are not. Kroenke's rich. Michael Bidwell isn't as rich. It's an advantage. We also have Steve Ballmer, who is worth more than 27 of the NBA owners combined. We also have the Dodgers ownership group, which is richer than the Cubs and White Sox combined. You do have a pretty solid NHL ownership. By and large, Chicago sports, like the politics, feels a little suboptimal, at times a little sketchy.
You're being a little kind. You're being a little gentle.
Do you think the McCaskies would ever sell?
So that is such a loaded question. So the history of so Virginia McCaskey's 102 years old and still the matriarch of the family. There are like 90 kids and grandkids, and she's put George McCaskey in charge. And George McCaskey is a nice guy who is, by all accounts, well-intentioned and well-meaning, but he is a simple guy who happens to be born to the family that owns the Bears. Like the stories of him are he's a big Cubs fan. And of course, the Cubs will give him a suite or invite him into Tom Ricketts' booth or whatever. And he's like, no, I just want to sit in section 120 with my 1984 Cubs jacket and have a beer and a hot dog. Like he's just a guy. He very proudly says, like, I'm not a football guy. I'm just a fan like all of you. The problem is you own the team. And so
Yeah.
somehow he hasn't learned and empowered people, and he gets taken advantage of, and they are cheap around the margins because they are not independently wealthy, to your point. In the NFL, you do have a salary cap and a salary floor, but there's no limit on what you could spend on coaches. There's no limit on what you could
Yeah.
spend on airplanes or facilities. And the Bears facilities have gotten a lot better, but like very recently, they were terrible. And so would they sell? There are McCaskies who want to sell. They want to cash out. They want to liquidate because they have zero interest in football. But they have this matriarch of a family, Virginia McCaskey, that goes back to the Hallises, the godfather of football, that is like, we're not selling. So when Miss McCaskey passes, there is at least a thought that maybe. But beyond that, no. Like for now and for the foreseeable future, now a 102-year-old lady, obviously on borrowed time, but their public stances were not selling. They're funding this stadium. They think it's going to be on the lakefront. It'll probably be in Arlington Heights. They hired Kevin Warren, the former commissioner of the Big Ten. Everything that they are doing publicly suggests they're going to keep this family business running. And I agree with you. It's a huge detriment. You know, it starts at the top, and Chicago ownership is a huge problem. If Jerry Reinsdorf didn't luck into Michael Jordan, he would have one White Sox World Series, and that's it. You know,
Yeah.
it's really, really bad. And I know I'm rambling here, but that question that you asked about whether or not the McCaskies would sell is at the heart of all issues facing the Bears.
Yes.
And nobody knows because there's just too many of them. Like no one, it is
Yeah.
not consolidated power.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is something I know Stan Kroenke a little bit. I've been to a couple parties with Stan, and he's a very stately guy, but kind of relatable. Like if you're at a party and you go up, he's drinking a beer and he's asking you questions. And, I was talking about this today with the Rams. They do not miss on defensive draft picks, and they run through coordinators. So it's not like Dick LeBeau in
Sure.
Pittsburgh, who it's the same scheme. I mean, they just run through coordinators. They don't miss. They find undrafted free agents at safety from Tennessee who get 4 picks. Like they don't miss. They've missed on occasional offensive picks, but I think offensive players, especially like offensive linemen, everybody's missed on offensive linemen. Great GMs have missed on offensive linemen. There are often weight issues. They often dominate weak competition. But a great example of ownership is that the Rams draft department is spectacular. And like last year, the Bears had 4 picks. They took a punter and then like an Ivy League tackle who was a major project,
Yep.
excuse me, who never really played again. I mean, like, to me, I'm not taking one of the hardest positions to play in football from the Ivy League. I may take a linebacker. I may take a guard. I'm not taking a left tackle from the Ivy League. I want him to have played against 7 SEC NFL edge rushers. So, and this is nothing against Ryan Poles specifically, but I don't think, I think when you touch on that, I know Steve Keim well. Steve Keim obviously have Michael Bidwell as an agent. And as gracious as he was to the NFL hosting the Vikings Rams, again, on the margins, the Rams just hire better people. And so it's interesting because I'm going to spend more time in Chicago and I look at the Bears and that's why I think McCarthy works, because he has dealt with a dysfunctional organization. He's dealt with a prickly quarterback. He's dealt with 2 high profile teams. Ben Johnson could go there and like in an hour be like, the hell did I get myself into?
There's no doubt about that. McCarthy has a high floor. I just personally think he has a low ceiling. And
Yeah.
attaching that to Caleb's rookie contract is uninspiring to me personally. Like he leaves Green Bay, Matt LaFleur comes in, modernizes the offense. Aaron Rodgers, who had been declining, immediately wins back-to-back MVPs. I don't think he is of the now. I think that he does what he does. He is a solid coach. You know that he can do the job. So there's that. But to me, that is just damning with faint praise. So, but here's what I've also been saying. You can fail with an offensive guy. You can fail with a defensive guy. You can fail with a retread. So at least he's an offensive retread. I mean, if they hired Brian Flores or Anthony Weaver, there was a report that Ryan Poles was smitten with the defensive coordinator of the Dolphins. Like, at least Mike McCarthy is an offensive head coach who has had success with multiple quarterbacks, who, whether he's calling the plays or not, has his own system that he knows. There would be stability for Caleb Williams. In my opinion, you cannot hire a defensive head coach when your quarterback isn't proven. And I know not everyone agrees with that. Hire a CEO, hire a leader of men type. But to me, it's just too risky to have that much instability for Caleb, who clearly is craving structure and stability right now.
All right, this week's college football preview is brought to you by our friends at Cosm. It's the world's greatest fan experience. If you're in LA, if you're in Dallas, and you want the most immersive football experience, check out the college football playoffs in shared reality at Cosm, where every play comes to life, putting you right on the field. I like it better with cold games and snow and the wild visual you get. Watch the College Football National Championship. Monday, it's Ohio State clashing with Notre Dame. That's January 20th on Monday. Take the College Football Playoff National Championship to a new level. Every play comes to life, putting you right on the field. The Hall is the ultimate bar on game day, a multi-viewing sports experience. I love sitting here so you can catch all the great games at once. Rams at the Eagles, Ravens at the Bills are the highlight. Those are the Sunday games. And so, Texans, Chiefs, nobody thinks Houston's going to win in 8-degree weather. Commanders at Lions. I think Commanders are fascinating. Jaden Daniels is Andrew Luck, maybe even better as a rookie, but the Lions have much better players. Ben Johnson with extra time to prepare. They'll bring out all the stops. Rams, Eagles, Ravens, Bills. You've had a remarkable year picking games. So I'm going to give you, of all four games, I'm going to give you my strongest take. No team plays perfect back-to-back. And the Rams played about 75% of that game, played perfect football, like they did against Buffalo at home. Go to the Buffalo game the following week, how'd they play? Less than perfect. The Eagles, meanwhile, played very poorly and won, which you can really coach a team hard when you win and play poorly. You can really kick ass that week at practice. It's that Philadelphia will not play that poorly. Jalen Hurts separates more from his concussion. Remember, historically, players off concussions generally struggle in the first game and a half. Is that the Eagles actually at -6 is one of the better bets of the weekend because we're in love with the standalone Rams performance, and go to the Bills game earlier. They offensively have really bad halves a lot. They are really Puka Nacua centric. I like the Eagles a lot this weekend, even though today that sounds outrageous.
So it's funny. In my gambling group chat, we were having this exact conversation. It's like, okay, 5, no, that's not a bet on the Rams. Oh, wow, it's 5.5. It's 6. It hit 6.5 for a minute and then went back down. And some of the guys jumped on at 6.5, like Rams plus 6.5, being like, this number is just crazy. But I think it's what you're talking about. It's Philly they played an awful game offensively.
Awful.
And they won by 12. Like they are really, really good. And the last time we saw Stafford in the rain, he looked terrible. And the weather does not sound like it's going to be excellent conditions for this game, as opposed to the Rams, who, the Rams were a great matchup for Minnesota. I bet the Rams was one of my biggest bets of the year. Like, or the Vikings were a great matchup for the Rams, is how I meant to say it. Um, all Brian Flores does is blitz. Matt Stafford is a 10 plus year veteran who has maybe the two best blitz beating receivers. Like Kupp and Nakua get open instantly. So,
Yeah.
and then Flores just kept blitzing and blitzing and blitzing. And the game is in a dome on a fast track. That was just the guy. He was 14. Stafford was 14 for 18 against the blitz with a passer rating of 144, his highest of the year. It was like he could do anything he wanted. I was like, maybe don't blitz. But I was glad he did because I hammered the Rams in that spot. So I agree with you. I think that Philly is going to play a much better game. Their defense is really good. Like nobody get
Yeah.
like everyone talks about their offense. Their defense is really good. So I like Philly in that spot. I'm going to go down with the ship with Josh Allen. Baltimore's already favored in Buffalo. Like they're playing the best football of anyone the last 5 weeks, but that's
You
a
know what?
little disrespectful.
So I've had my worst betting year of my career. A lot of it, I think Jason McIntyre has pointed out that the new kickoff rules are giving good quarterbacks even more of an advantage. I mean, last night, the first play of the game, Rams completed to Puka Nakua. They're like in field goal range.
Yeah. By the way, another take of mine from early in the year on Breakfast Ball that I feel like aging kind of well. Arena League goalposts. They're 18 yards wide. Make them 9 yards wide. More fourth down attempts. I want to see less field goal attempts. You get the ball to 30, you get two passes, you're in field goal range for Brandon Aubrey. Not interested. Sorry, go ahead.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Um, this is the best version of the Bills.
Yeah.
And though we think of Baltimore as a cold weather operation, Lamar doesn't love playing in the cold. And I think they become very Derrick Henry and Lamar dominant. This Bills team now is a top five back, a top two left tackle, a top two quarterback. One of the better now that the rookie from Florida State has emerged, the slot receiver. Like it's a real receiving core. Two capable tight ends. This is their best offensive line. And Sean McDermott, to his credit, I think is a better coach than 2 years ago. I think he has gotten better. I mean, it's so funny that you're not allowed to get, they even say you can increase your IQ in your 30s and 40s. Like you can. Um, I'm I'm not betting against
Oh,
Buffalo. In every game that has mattered this year at home, they have crushed
well, I
everybody.
don't like this. I don't like us agreeing on these picks. Your
Those are my
record's been
two.
terrible.
I know.
I think you look around and all of a sudden if the company you're keeping isn't where you want to be. You're like, uh-oh, maybe I change my stance. Maybe I better parlay Baltimore and the Rams.
How about this though? But I did say it this year. So you and Nick are very good at this gambling stuff, and you're both kind of mathy. That's why Nick's so good at poker, and I would presume you've done a little bit of poker
Him
in
and I
your
have played a
life.
lot of poker together. Yeah.
That yeah. So I think one of the things I do that I really enjoy doing, and I don't know if I do it well, but I think I'm pretty good at it, is seeing cultural changes in sports and theorizing what is happening in sports. And I was on this 3 years ago. I said, watch out. As the sport becomes more offensive, there will be only one way to win, and it will be by quarterback. And this year, the winner of each division had the quarterback that played the best all year for the longest period. Lamar played better for a longer period than Burrow, who got scorching hot at the end. And if you look at last weekend, every team that won, the quarterback that played better won the
Yeah.
game. And the NFL is becoming a little like the NBA, a very small elite 4 or 5 teams, a very tiny middle, and dreck in the bottom 12 to 14 teams. And I think this is going to continue because as the league has become virtually quarterback and offensive head coach centric, there's one way to win in this league now. One. That's
It's
it.
so funny you bring this up because Nick would make fun of my picks, even though I kept winning and winning and winning. Um, and I was saying it's the year of the favorites. And so like traditionally like sharp bettors who bet underdogs.
I love dogs. I loved it
Of
my whole life.
course. So do I. Of course. You should. it's a sport of parity. It's a sport with a salary cap and a salary floor and worst to first teams and the bad team. This isn't college football. Like a big underdog is 8 points, 9 points. You can win outright in that situation all the time. Of course, everyone, you should love underdogs historically, but not if what you just said is true. If there's a few teams at the top that are awesome, and then there's a bunch of really bad teams, I think I trust that those teams at the top, when they're favored by 6 over a really bad team, it's like they're gonna take care of business and cover those spreads. Favorites crushed this year, and they really crushed in December as teams were out of it, as teams were thinking about Cabo, as teams were firing coaches, and the really good teams were gearing up for Super Bowl runs. So I don't know if that will continue or if we'll just start to see bigger point spreads in the NFL. Like I mean, that game, week 18, like Baltimore was a 20-point favorite against Cleveland. I didn't lay it.
That's just
They didn't cover, but it was close. Like, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like they won by 3.
NFL playoffs. We're talking about NFL playoffs. You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is a key to winning in the NFL playoffs, and the key to you scoring big is betting on them. At DraftKings, the number one place to bet touchdowns. If you're ready to place your first bet, make it really simple. A player scoring a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook's app, download it, make your pick. Here's another reason to watch your favorite players crush it on the playoffs. If you're a new customer, you bet $5, that's it. $5, get 200 in bonus bets instantly by betting just $5. So score big, DraftKings Sportsbook during the playoffs. Download the app, use the code Colin, COLIN. That will get you $200 in bonus bets if you bet the $200. So if you want $200 in bonus bets, you got to put in the code Colin. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. So I have, pivoting to the NBA, I have Adam Silver on my show tomorrow. Many of you will be listening to this today as of Wednesday, as we shoot this in the late afternoon on Tuesday. And I have a series of questions I'm going to ask Adam Silver. If you could ask him one, what would it be?
Such a great interview spot for you. To me, all of the quote unquote problems with the NBA boil down to the fundamental issue that the regular season doesn't mean anything. 81 of 82 just doesn't matter. And if you watch the regular season and you then watch the postseason, they are different sports.
Yeah.
How can you fundamentally change it? Because the 3-point issue is an offshoot of that to me. The 60-game minimum for the star player, that's a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. The All-Star game, that's one thing that's an event. How can you fundamentally change when these guys have hundreds of millions of dollars that they've earned fully guaranteed? It's been proven that you don't need to have home court advantage to win a finals. You don't need to be the 1 seed. Why should fans care about your regular season when your players clearly don't? Like that to me is the fundamental issue facing the NBA, because they would say, hey, they just signed $75 billion worth of television contracts. There is no issue. But the NBA no longer feels like an event. It's just a game. I can miss it. I don't have to watch. When Jokic and Wemby have a great game, I can just see the highlights on my phone. I don't need to watch it start to finish. And I love the NBA. I love it. So it pains me to say it. But the fundamental issue, and what could spend the whole 20 minutes or 15 minutes, however long you have with him on, what realistically can be done to get not just superstars, everybody, every player,
right,
to care about the regular season like they do the postseason.
Well, think about basketball, international, high school, and college. there's a sudden death reality to the end of seasons, except the NBA,
Yes.
where even in the first round, it's sometimes 7 game series where you're just waiting, 3-0 lead favorite, underdog goes to overtime, wins game 4, game 5's a blowout. And I think Daryl Morey has suggested sudden death. I don't think that's the answer because it is a star-driven league, and I don't want to star on a bad referee call bounce from the playoffs. But I would go 3 games first round, 5 games second, 5 game conference final, 7 final. And I think that creates some urgency. That means if a guy gets banged up and is going to miss 2 games and you're the favorite, like Jaylen Brown gets banged up and you're like at half of one game. Okay, he's not coming back until game 4. It's like, whoa, 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 that could be an elimination game. I feel like now you can literally, there are games in the NBA playoffs. Like game 3 for the team trailing 0-2 is just perfunctory. It's the obligatory, okay, home team will hold serve. They'll win a close one or even a blowout. And then by game 4, the favorite then hammers. And I think anytime sports has games that I feel like I know the outcome going in. That's why the 12-team college football playoff, one of the things to be concerned about is the first round. When you get a Boise State going to Ohio State, that's just like a game in September.
Right.
That doesn't get me to a TV. And I think a lot of this is just the greed of owners and the expansion of sports. The NFL has no reason to extend. I could argue you could shrink it. I mean, there's the revenues from television alone. You don't even need stadium attendance now. But I think this is the reality is you've got arena contracts, you've got owners who just don't want to give up the
No,
capital.
well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
No one will give up the inventory, but you say they wouldn't do single elimination, and it's the same thing, right? Because 7 games on TV is more valuable than 1 game on TV. And you say you don't want to have a bad call bounce a team. Why? Like, it happens in March Madness. It happens in the NFL playoffs. It happens in the best tournaments, the college football playoff. It doesn't happen in baseball, basketball, and hockey. And college football, March Madness, and the Super Bowl are more popular than all 3 of those sports postseasons. So I would be very interested if they said, like, all right, 2029. Everyone's got plenty of time to adjust and prepare. TV networks figure it out, charge your ad rates, whatever. It's a single elimination postseason. Because what would happen? I honestly don't know. If you got 10 million people for an NBA Finals game, but it was a single elimination NBA Finals, would 35 million people watch? I don't know the answer to that. Like, I gotta think more people would watch fewer games, and I'd be interested to know what the economics of it would be. And I know it would get people talking, and it would be interesting. But the other thing, it's such a cool spot that you have Silver, is he is clearly like a progressive, player-friendly commissioner, and the players trust the owners in the NBA more than any other league, right? They've got a true partnership. Yeah. I feel like they should exploit it more. And exploit has a negative connotation, but it took baseball a lot to do the pitch clock and to make some rules changes. Yeah. Just change some rules. Don't change the court in the in-season tournament. Let's try in-season tournament games. We're playing with international rules. In-season tournament games, we're playing with no corner 3. In-season tournament games, we're playing with 30-foot three-point line. Like, if one of 82 doesn't matter, let's experiment with regular season games and tinker with some rules. Let's say for the month of January, the Kirk Goldsberry idea, like each team gets to draw their own three-point line. So the Warriors' three-point line is one thing, the Nuggets is another one, Portland's is another one, Chicago's is another one. Maybe one team has no three-point line altogether if they're a bad three-point shooting team. Like experiment a little bit more with your product to see what you can change to maximize it. Because I feel like some of the things that they do is like, we're going to change the All-Star game format. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, how do you change the game to make it so that, like, I get the math. I get it. Three is
Well,
more than two. I
but
understand. It's 50% more than two.
yeah.
But your sport has a fundamental viewership problem if it's not a good idea for Anthony Edwards to try to dunk. He's one of the greatest athletes in the world, and he'll take 10, 15 threes a game like it's nothing. You want him attacking the basket. So I would really love to talk to him about how radical of ideas are you willing to try for a product that economically is not broken, but I feel like for those of us who love the sport would say that it is.
Yeah, aesthetically, again, I don't start really diving into the NBA until I would say almost after this weekend, and you get down to a couple of
Yeah.
games. Now I'll watch 20 minutes. I watched 30 minutes the other day on a treadmill. I do a lot of that stuff. But a lot of times, when I get home, starting in about a week, at 4 o'clock, 4:30, I'll turn on an NBA game and I'll make dinner and eat dinner and I'll watch the first half of an NBA game. I'll try to pick a different team or good teams every night. So that's kind of how I start. Then the NFL season ends and now I start watching games. But that 4:30 window West Coast, I'll watch an NBA game. By the way, as I have a place in Chicago, I'm a Bulls season ticket holder. So, I like going to the events. I like it too. I think the other thing that some of these things, no league is perfect. I do think the NFL, baseball is a bit burdened by its past. It's very much about history and lore, and the NBA isn't. I mean, the truth is, it's when Jackie Moon, the movie was made. I mean, that's kind of a realistic, funny look at the old ABA. It was like colorful and
Yeah.
weird, and it's not something that anybody really cares about. Spencer Haywood's stats, right, with the Sonics. So you can experiment. Like baseball freaks out about the golden at bat, and I understand the purist that says it screws up with all the numbers, but my take is you had cattle steroids for 10 years. Let's get over the numbers. Steroids, in a weird way, allows you to be more progressive today with your rules. But I don't think the NBA is burdened by that at all. I don't think the NFL or hockey is that, just change stuff and make it better. And I also think that of all the sports that are have some connectivity with tech, and maybe it's the Warriors' popularity in the Bay Area. There's just tech people everywhere. Is that Silicon Valley is almost notable, almost proud of the fact that angel investors back 20%. They might as well be Babe Ruth. Like you take big swings and you miss on a lot. That's built into the cake of angel investing. So I do think the NBA is not burdened by any of the history and the records. Nobody cares. I don't know how many points Michael Jordan scored, and I don't care.
So do you think it's on the board that because this would fundamentally solve it? Because the 3-point issue is a math issue. Like it's boring,
Yeah.
but it's a math issue, right? 3 is 50% more than 2. So if you shoot 33% from 3, that is the EV, expected value, equivalent of shooting 50% from 2. And they can train a lot of guys to shoot 35% from 3, right? That's like the very basic simplified version of the math. So if you made 3's worth 4 and 2's worth 3, the math changes. Like the 4-pointer would not be 50% more valuable than the 3-pointer. It would be 33% more valuable than the 3-pointer. You would see a lot less threes.
But so there are lines where you don't want to feel like you don't want to annihilate or erase all
But
your
you
history.
just said that they're not
Right?
burdened by it.
Well, they're not burdened by it, but there is a top 10 all-time scoring list that does matter. That's the one we all know. It's like, oh, okay, it's LeBron and it's
Yeah.
Kareem and it's Malone and yeah, I don't want to annihilate history, but I'm not paralyzed by it. I think that would annihilate history.
It would, but it's like a catch-22, right? Like, do you want to solve the problem? That solves the problem. It's,
Yeah, I don't there's so many lines in the sand. It's like anything else. It's like, let's say you had an ex-wife. It would be one thing to if she got if she won the lottery, to text her and go, hey, congratulations. It'd be another thing to text her if you were married and say, I was just thinking about you. I'm going out Friday. It's like, well, it's texts. And you obviously thought about her with both texts. One feels a little over the
Yeah.
line. So, like, yeah. So it's like, it's one of those things where I am for new stuff. I am Mr. Move bulldoze history. But there are lines in sports, and I think the top 10 all-time scoring list is a line that should be
Okay.
protected.
Yeah. And I, by the way, like, I don't even, I don't fundamentally disagree with that. I want to know what the smartest people are doing to solve it, right? Like the first step of solving any problem is admitting you have one. Like, I could understand why 30 billionaires just signed just locked in record setting, stupid 10-figure revenue for the next decade for their business. And they're like, what are you guys talking about? Problem with the NBA? I
Right.
could, I think that would be a totally reasonable stance for Jerry Reinsdorf or Steve Ballmer or whomever. Good owner, bad owner, young, old, tech, old money, inherited, business savant, whatever, to be like, buddy, this is a business. We My franchise just goes up and up and up in value. I get offers every day for it. There are more people more billionaires than teams. It's a vanity thing. It makes me cool. It gives me an identity. What are you talking about that there's an issue with my sport? Because they look at it like a business. So
Yeah.
I don't know if the NBA agrees with me that they have a problem. So then they're not going to do anything radical to solve it.
So at the Eagles Packers game, a very obnoxious Eagles fan said some vile things to a woman who was a Packer fan sitting below. The vile Eagle fan is not the sharpest tool in the shed. There was somebody by her filming him, and he didn't recognize that. That didn't resonate with him, which is if somebody's filming you at a game and you're punching somebody or you're saying horrible things to somebody and you have a really good corporate job, may want to scale back. I mean, that he couldn't identify that speaks to his sort of lack of self-awareness. But the internet, as it's prone to do, and I don't have a problem with the internet doing this, highlighted his really bad behavior, repugnant behavior. Well, his company saw it and fired him. And I just wanted to see the remarks from fans, and fans said, well, why didn't you confront him instead of taking a picture? To which I would say, he could be a UFC fighter, he could be a drunk, he could have a knife in his pocket. You don't know what you're getting into at a stadium. You have no idea. A lot of these guys they're drunk and they want to get into a fight. And it's like, I'm with my wife. I don't want you to disrupt me. Your bad behavior is not going to change my behavior. I'll just make sure you get in trouble. So I don't have a problem just saying, quit being a jerk. Security, here, you take care. I'm not a security guard. Stadiums have them, you know. And a lot of people push back, well, he shouldn't lose his job. And I had this belief, and I still kind of believe it, but I used to talk about it all the time. I think I wrote about it in my first book. There are two types of guys, job guy and career guy. Career guy, it's a stigma to get into a fight. You're a law partner. You're an executive. You do something that's public. Usually, you have things to protect. Job guy is like, you could go into the warehouse and go, hey, I got into a fight at the Eagles game and deck this guy. It'd be a badge of honor to some job guy. So it's always remarkable to me when it's a corporate guy doing it. And I do feel bad that he would lose his job. But for some reason, for whatever reason, I don't feel too bad that if you're a schmuck and you're taped and people don't want to confront you in the moment and you lose your job, even if you're married with kids, should I feel worse about it than I do? Because I'm kind of glad he lost his job.
I will not spend 1 minute feeling sorry for that guy. Sorry, no. What? I should he lose his job? No. But is it okay that he did? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like actions have consequences. Um, and by the way, he didn't look hammered. He didn't sound hammered. He was just like
It was just a
very
jerk.
calmly saying horrible, disgusting, vile things to a woman on camera, unapologetically, because she was rooting for a different set of laundry. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous behavior. So, no, I don't like celebrate that he lost his job.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah, no,
celebrating it.
not at all. Not at all. I wouldn't try to pile on of the losing of his job. But what I felt about that video was that it is so much worse than a fight at a sporting event. I can kind
Yeah.
of like, I don't condone fighting at sporting events, obviously, but like, you root for the Red Sox, you root for the Yankees. It's $17 beer night, and we've had a dozen of them. And you say something, and I say something, and machismo and testosterone, and you get into a fight. Like, it's not good, but sports are primal. I say less hate in the world, more hate in sports. So, like, sometimes that sports hate that I condone and like, and it leads to rivalries and trash talk and spinning a ball in a guy's face and taunting penalties and pushing and shoving. Like, I can't then be completely offended when a fan does it. So, like, a sports fight among fans, I don't love it, but it doesn't really bother me that it happens. It's just like cost of doing business. That is just subhuman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just overt cruelty.
Yeah.
So I don't feel bad for that guy at all. If he would have been 12 shots deep, slurring his words, punched someone, that gets caught on camera and he gets fired for that, I would honestly feel way worse for him than what he did.
Yeah.
And maybe that is completely
Yeah.
logically inconsistent, but that video was appalling. And sorry, man, you've got to live with the consequences of your actions. We're not imprisoning you for it. A private company fired you because they were embarrassed to employ you because you acted like a jackass. That's life.
Okay, here's another
All right.
curveball. Jerry
Yeah.
Jones goes on a very popular show called Landman. It's very good. Billy Bob
I haven't
Thornton.
seen the show, but I saw the
It's got
clip.
yeah, it's a little like Yellowstone. I think it's sometimes it's a little overwritten, like nobody's that clever ad-libbing,
Sorkin-esque.
Remember the movie? Yeah, you remember the movie Juno? This like young kid sounds like, Stephen Colbert riffing off one-liners. And I'm like, yeah, it's a little over the top. So Landman's a little overwritten, but Billy Bob Thornton sells the hell out of it, and it's good. So Jerry Jones makes an appearance on it and does a remarkable job. And it goes back to something years ago. I was at a party, and I don't go to a lot of these parties. I've probably been to three in 8 years in LA. And there were some writers and Hollywood people. And one of them was an acting coach. And I just asked him about it. I said, on average, how talented are they? He goes, never forget, the stars of Stranger Things are kids. It's just make believe. It doesn't take extraordinary amounts of talent to act. And I thought, whoa, he's an acting coach.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think I'd be a good actor. But when Jerry Jones did it, it took me back to that
Yeah.
conversation where he's like, yeah, 7-year-olds are literally gripping on TV because they're good pretenders. A lot of people play in the world of fantasy and pretending and dress up. And so I want to just ask you this. Chicago's known for Second City, a lot of really quality actors. Could you act? Do you think it takes extraordinary skill? Like, for instance, an 8-year-old couldn't be an astronaut or a mayor. An 8-year-old couldn't be a civil engineer. They can act. How much talent does it take to act?
It takes an extraordinary amount of talent to be great. Like Daniel Day-Lewis has an extraordinary amount of talent. Like
Okay.
I do believe that. I believe that um, people who can make you buy wide-ranging characters over a long period of time that do a lot of different things and they're successful in a lot of different avenues and venues, and then you can see them do like Jamie Foxx has an incredible amount of talent. You
Yes,
know,
yes.
and now it's not just acting, right? It's music, it's comedy, it's dance, it's everything.
Yeah, he is hyper talented, but he
Correct.
sings, does stand up. Like I've argued this for years. Of all performers, comedians are underrated.
Oh, for
I
sure.
mean,
For
Dave Ch-
sure.
Dave Chappelle gets one take, writes his own stuff, and I mean,
Performs it.
some
Yeah.
actors performs it one
Yeah.
take.
No question. I think like anything, the best of the best are incredibly talented, but really good material. That's why you listen to any podcast or interview with these actors that are like, they're like, what do you judge it on? They're like, the script, the writing, the director. There's there's no doubt. Now, could I don't want to be like too unfair, but like, could Luke Wilson have done Castaway? Like, no. I don't. I think Tom Hanks has like a certain amount of skill and gravitas to carry a 2 hour and 15 minute epic where he's alone on an island. I think
So you don't think Pauly Shore could have done The
I
Irishman?
don't. Yeah, I don't. Like, I think that there is definitely some skill, but I think that but most of it is it's a um it's a very collaborative job that feels individualized. Like, to be a great actor, you have to have a great script, a great writer, a great director. You have to have producers. It has to be well lit. It has to be well shot. It has to be well budgeted. There's a lot of things that have to happen to make you look good and for you to get the $20 million paycheck. Whereas the stand-up comedian, the pen, the microphone, the venue. Like, you're the talent, the songwriter, the pen, the guitar, the microphone, the venue. Like, you are mostly like it. I think that it is among the performing arts, it probably is the one that requires the least amount of talent, but the best are still great. Did that make sense?
Yeah, musical talent is it's pretty extraordinary to me. When
Extraordinary.
you see a like, is it John Batiste, the
Yep. Amazing.
pianist? Like you see it, it's amazing. Like I watch him and I'm like, this is AI. This
Well,
can't be
listen, I
real.
know nothing. Like, I know nothing about music. I will joke that like I like 100% of the concerts I've been to because every single time I'm blown away that they're doing it. I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Like, I did the recorder, then the clarinet, and then I was like just good enough at the clarinet to qualify in to do saxophone in seventh grade. And at the performance or the band recital or whatever, I was just like, oh, these kids are just like way too good. And I was just like pantomiming playing the saxophone and I stopped. And I was just like, no one could
Right.
tell. Like, so like I don't have any musical ability whatsoever. So it always blows my mind. Like, good, bad. They're like, oh, that was a terrible show. I'm like, really? That was like one of the most incredible things I've ever heard. So I always think it's also funny when like sports commentators or something all of a sudden become American Idol judges whenever we like, oh, that was a terrible rendition of God Bless America. Like, you have no idea if that was a C flat or a B minor or whatever the hell it is. So I am not qualified
Yeah.
to grade music.
Okay, so we do sort of a broad, sweeping podcast on anything we want to talk about. So obviously the fires in Los Angeles has been. I mean, I lived in Washington State during Mount St. Helens, but a couple hours away. And this is the closest natural disaster. And it's interesting. I have several opinions, and I think two or three things can be true. I don't think politics and California politics has helped firefighters, in my opinion. I do think the environmental mafia up in Sacramento can be a roadblock to common sense. But I also think when you have hurricane force winds and instead of rain, there's fire in it, there's nothing firefighters can do. It would have burned 500 homes or 1,500 homes. There was nothing you can do. If you go online with a video, and I know Palisades very well, narrow roads, windy roads, wild topography, canyons, stuff just bounced canyon to canyon. There's nothing you could have done. And people say, well, you shouldn't politicize it. But it is interesting. And I think to myself, why not? Because in order to get things done, powerful entities like Sacramento, for instance, or a powerful governor are rarely vulnerable. And there are these moments in time when their policy or their direction makes citizens vulnerable or at risk. And people are uncomfortable. You hear this all the time. I can't believe you make that political. And I would argue almost everything is up for political discussion in a very tribal country. So I wasn't necessarily put off by the politics. I just didn't agree with a lot of the takes. I thought it was a tsunami historically for wildfires at once. I don't, you could have had 100 more fire trucks. Planes couldn't go in the air for a day and a half because of the wind, so you couldn't fight it. I think almost everything is fair game politically. Do you?
Yes, of course. Of course. I am not an expert on firefighting. I am not an expert
Yeah.
on California. I am not, so all of those caveats aside. But there are problems that are too big for a person or group of people to address and solve. And at some like baseline, overly simplified level, that's what government and politics is. Like people are like, oh, there was no water in the fire hydrants. I'm like, okay, I don't know everything that led to that, but I also know that when I see a fire hydrant on the side of the road, my expectation isn't that that can put out a wildfire. It's that it can stop a house from burning down. You know?
Right.
So like I think that some of the grandstanding and the like, see, I told you so, and I was right, and it is this person's fault, like that is just gross and an oversimplification, clearly of a disaster. But if we can't talk about, hey, this happened, we clearly didn't do a great job. Like, you know what I mean? Like this
Right.
happened and we were not able to stop it.
And it happens regularly on an almost
Well,
annual basis.
that's my point. This happened. We couldn't stop it. It's going to happen again. No individual is capable of stopping it. If an individual isn't capable of stopping it, the next thing that you would turn to is the government. So then it's politics. And that, by the way, is a totally apolitical observation. Left, right, pro Newsom, anti-Trump, pro-Trump, like that observation right there, I feel like people on both sides of the aisle should just obviously agree with. Like, how, if this isn't a thing that government and like tax dollars are supposed to go towards solving,
Yeah.
then why do we have government again? Like, what are you talking about? Like, of course this is
Yeah.
political. Of course.
Yeah. Don't, don't, don't buy a house in Juneau if you don't like chilly weather. And don't buy a house in Phoenix if you're bothered by hot weather. Don't be a politician if you wanted to always be civil and above board. It's going to go sideways. You're going to be attacked. That it's called politics, right?
Yeah.
Like that. If you had a friend and I said, I like Danny, but he's very political, right? That would be like a stigma. It's like, yeah, Danny's the political one. It's politics. This is what it is. So as everybody was, and I don't even consider this a political
No.
conversation. And because whenever political people talk sports, I always think, oh, they sound so rudimentary and so
Yeah.
pedestrian. And so I know I don't have, I read like everybody else, but I think this is the time to attack a governor. This is a time to attack a mayor. This is a time to say, okay, this is a real crisis. Why weren't your
Well,
policies
and by the
better?
way, I don't know the answer. I'm totally fine with independent review. Let some experts tell us if they did a good job or not, or if this could have been prevented with different policies that were suggested and you got cheap on and voted down or dismissed or whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't know who was at fault, but I think it's crazy to suggest that politicians shouldn't be criticized or questioned when really bad things happen, whether or not they are directly responsible for it or not. And I mean, maybe this makes it more political than you want to make it, but like, I feel the same way about mass shootings. Of course, we should talk about that in a political sense when it comes to gun laws. Or to go,
How about this? This isn't perfectly analogous, but if somebody, a sports figure, was a bully or did bad things and he dies, and people say, Bobby Knight dies, and people are critical of him the day he dies, and people say, that's disrespectful. And I'm like, well, time out. Are you producing my show? Should I talk about it 6 days from now? What's the timeline on when I can talk about Bobby Knight's bad behavior? To me, we produce a show. The only way to accumulate an audience is talk about stuff people are talking about. So I'm not going to have, I always said this, I don't mind if callers, when I used to take them, disagree with me. Don't try to produce my show. I'm good at it. I know what I'm doing. I don't try to produce your mortgage, your title company. I'm not here to tell you how to do it. And my take has always been, Bobby Knight dies. That's the day to be critical. That holds all of us somewhat accountable to being better human beings.
I agree completely. Yeah. The idea of like, don't speak ill of the dead. Like, okay. I mean, if you want to treat your aunt that way, fine. But if it's a public figure, I think that's what eulogies are for. Like that's what their family is for. Like the obituary is going to tell the life story. So I completely agree with you. Now, I think that obviously there is good taste. You know, I didn't love the president-elect tweeting or truth socialing the Hollywood Hills burning with the Hollywood sign saying Trump was right. Like I didn't think that was in particularly good taste. I thought that was a bit of a troll when thousands of people were fleeing their homes. On the flip side, just to like go to the other side of it, like, do you remember when Hurricane Sandy obviously hit the Northeast?
Yeah.
And Chris Christie got crushed for greeting Obama with a hug and a handshake. And he was like, wait a minute, this doesn't have to be like, he's coming here to like visit victims and give federal dollars to help rebuild. Like we could disagree politically. We're going to try to agree on how to help people after a hurricane. Like, so I'm not saying that there is no room for taste and decorum, but, and this is callous, 4 months from now, if they're like, you got to wait 4 months until we can talk about it, something else will be dominating the news cycle by that point. Like it, unfortunately, like not for the people that lost their homes, like that, this will be something that impacts them for years and years and years. Not that it still won't be a news story or relevant and the government will still be investigating and all that insurance claim and all the things. But like, this is when our attention is on it. So of course, this is when we should have at least the preliminary conversation on what to do about it. I don't find it offensive at all.
I judge the quality of a fragrance by the compliments you get. When I wore Ovation for the first time, second time, and third time, usually I walk past somebody and they're like, hey, what you got on? Who over there smelling good? That's the injection of confidence right there to you.
That's right. We want to be at the forefront of using the brand as a gateway for these young athletes. Custom suit, we do a photo shoot, we do video, and it's all about that partnership to create a personal brand.
And I love you guys associating it with more sophistication. Throwing a suit on a kid, sometimes it takes for you to see yourself with a suit on in the mirror to be like, hey, I have more to offer.
Ovation for Men, we're part of Amazon's Black Business Accelerator. You know, Amazon has invested $150 million for the next 4 years to uplift small businesses like myself to scale. You know, Amazon is really putting their money where their mouth is.
They're committed to excellence on every level. They want to scale these businesses to be amongst the best in whatever industry industry they're in.
You've always been authentic. You've always been pushing excellence.
Well, I appreciate that.
As our slogan says, every man deserves an ovation.
Yes, sir.
Listen, this relationship with Ovation for Men, Richard Sherman, The Volume, this is just the beginning.
I appreciate you guys letting me be a part of your journey. If you haven't already checked them out, go out there, get your man some, and get the sport too. And it can be Christmas, birthday, holidays, or yesterday, but make sure you get it.